In the static display here, also from historic helicopters, you can see their bright yellow shipped to the UK and re-engined with a single Napier Gazelle engine. KS-1 variant. They began to be delivered in 1960 and entered service the following year. It was the first anti-submarine helicopter for the Royal Navy that was designed for that role from the outset, and with gas turbine power. Right from the outset, the Wessex HAS-1 gave Royal Navy anti-submarine warfare capabilities a huge boost, significantly in the night and all-weather regimes. It had a larger payload and all-round superior performance to the whirlwind that preceded it. In the Royal Marines Commando support role, flying from the Navy's assault ships. They operated in significant numbers. The Atlantic conveyor was sunk in late May 1982 after an attack by Argentinian Navy Super Étendard strike aircraft with their Exocet missiles. With 848 and 847 squadrons, not least, out in the Far East, before it was transferred to the rescue, the search and rescue role with 771 Squadron at Culdrose. Then it went back to the commando role with 845 Squadron in the Falklands. It was flown out there in a short Belfast transport of heavy lift cargo airlines in May 1982 and came back aboard the Royal Fleet Auxiliary ship RAF. It was retired by the Royal Navy in 1986 and became a general instructional airframe. For a time it was actually Alize. Andrew was telling me Royal Navy retired its last Wessex in 1988. The RAF didn't do so for another 15 years when the type was phased out by... You can see the most famous, perhaps, of all Royal Navy Wessex, the HAS-3 model, serial XP142, known as Humphrey, which was stationed aboard HMS Antrim flying programme. They're going to be taking off to go and hold and get into formation prior to their sequence a little later on. And these three aircraft brought together under the umbrella of an organisation called Cocarde Marine, which I'll tell you more about when they display, almost a French equivalent, as it were, of our own Navy wings. So, on the roll first, the Morin-Saunier MS-760 Paris and the very distinctive V-tailed Fugger CM-175 Zephyr. And now, what a sight this is. operated by as with the Wessex, what a machine. And the now quite rare sound accompanying it of the Rolls-Royce Dart turboprop engine that powered such famous airliners as the F-35B, which is going to be so important in the future service of the Queen. As Rob was saying, we will of course later on be seeing the Harrier in action, courtesy of the AV-8B model from the Spanish Navy, and the contrast that Rob mentioned between the modes of vertical flight really will be one to take great interest of. On the roll now, our next display item, the two British Aircraft Corporation Strikemasters. They'll just be taking a moment to position for their display. You might think this is a Jet Provost. Well, of course the Jet Provost was a very successful trainer on the world market, and the British Aircraft Corporation, BAC, line astern formation there for that barrel roll before the Strikemasters were very heavily engaged in something called the Dauphin Rebellion. It was a conflict in which communist-backed rebel forces, known locally as the Adu, meaning the enemy, were trying to take over the Dauphin province of Oman from the control of the Sultanate. And the Strikemaster was a huge step up in capability compared with the piston-engined Percival Provost it replaced in Omani service. There they are, rolling through the twister. Of course, the jet-powered Strikemaster was much machine guns. They even introduced a rudimentary light attack capability on these aircraft, which later on came to be performed with the use of flares for illuminating targets by night. Quite apart from anything else, the introduction of the Strikemaster jets had a major demoralizing effect on the enemy forces in Dauphin. In towards us, with nose lights and smoke on, as they get ready for the strikey split. The most notable engagement in which the Omani Strikemasters were in the whole rebellion. And the two aircraft we see on display today recall the extensive combat use of the Strikemaster by Oman. from the left, and there's the cross. One that's built as late as 1986, which makes it newer than the Hawks and the Red Arrows that we'll be seeing later. Audi Mark 80A. The wings are from an Omani Mark 82A, and those wings, it was found during the restoration, sustained some battle damage during the Battle of Mirbat. This is a new restoration. That's the aeroplane diving in to join number 1 as number 2 in the formation. It took 2 aircraft now getting into tail chase configuration, starting off with a barrel roll. UMass based at and the cloud base allowing them to do their vertical finale, so pulling up with smoke on and splitting at the top. Very nice indeed. You can find out more about their activities by going to Strikemaster Display UK on Facebook. These guys really have done a tremendous Yeovilton Military Wives Choir. That'll be followed by the HMS Heron Volunteer Band, also in Hangar 7. In Hangar 8, Titan the Robot will be on hand to meet at 12 noon, and in the arena, the field gun demonstration run by personnel stationed here aboard HMS Heron will be taking place in the arena. That's followed in the arena at 12:40 by the band of Her Majesty. Evidence of that. And in over the threshold to follow him, completing another very professional, very smooth performance indeed, Mark Petrie, bringing to a close the display by the 2 BAC Strikemasters. Alize. Set of shapes in the sky as much as anything else. The aircraft in the lead, the Paris, a product of a manufacturer that's as famous and as revered in France as, for example, de Havilland is. Saunier decided to develop that design as a 4-seat transport and communications aircraft, with the idea of it finding both military and civil customers, and the result, the MS-760 Paris, leads the formation through once again. Navy became its first operator with 14 aircraft. It used them until 1990. To put that aeroplane onto the French. That of a type of wind, and it fitted in with the other wind-related names of French Navy aircraft at that time. Among them, the Brigade Alize second of the two aircraft, the two jets passing by there. 30 of them only would be. They tracked ground targets, they performed electronic surveillance, radio relay, rescue operations in hostile territory, and anti-marine pollution work. They were deployed. There was just one export customer for the Alize. That was the Indian Navy, which bought 14. In India, decoy system, data link, forward-looking infrared, and all sorts of other improvements, but by then really the platform was out of date, and they were retired in September 2000 when the Foch carrier was decommissioned with the advent of the current French Navy carrier, the Charles de Gaulle. This one's the only one still flying. It's operated by the Association Alize Marine from its old base at Nîmes-Garant, where the idea of getting the aircraft flying again slowly grew. Many thought it would be impossible at the outset. Thankfully, you see the two jets coming through. Here's the Zephyr giving us a wing rock with the undercarriage and the arrestor hook down. In comes the Paris, which also, apart from the French, served with the air forces of Argentina and Brazil, and it was built under license in both countries. But this, one of the French-built originals of the MS-760 Paris, from Arbor Aéropation at Morlaix, flown by Georges Toussaint. And the last of them into land, the Zephyr, from the Zephyr 28 Association, 28 being the aircraft serial number, and touching down retired French Navy Admiral Xavier Uday. Absolutely delightful to see those three aircraft on display. I hope they return to Yeovilton many times in the future. That the contribution from three of the civilian organisations that form part of Cocarde Marine. He served at Yeovilton in the late 60s. To fly a warbird like a Hurricane, a Spitfire, a Mustang, or a Sea Fury, we have to say, given that we're at Yeovilton, this is one of the aircraft that you would train on. And large numbers of Fleet Air Arm pilots trained on high. To the RAF, but it went to the South African Air Force. They kept it until 1969, when the Portuguese Air Force acquired it as a gunnery trainer. 10 years later it came to the... And the F-35 and Sea Fury pilots will be there until about 1 o'clock, when the Coquard Marine pilots that we've just seen in action with the Alize, the Zephyr and the Paris will be taking over. Meanwhile, landing on after a really nice aerobatic display, Nigel Wilson with the North American Harvard. Royal Navy International Air Day flying programme with another of our international visitors and a very rare one indeed. We were delighted to welcome the Royal Canadian Air Force to last year's Air Day with their CF-188 Hornet display. Well, now we're going to see some flypasts by one of the air transport mainstays of the Royal Canadian Air Force. Rolling now, Lockheed Martin CC-130J Hercules. And fairly leaping into the air with a max performance takeoff. To start, these flight operators, past and present, use the aircraft for troop transport, for tactical airlift, and also for, of course, aircrew training as and when required.
It's like an Echo.
So this J model is a very, very impressive aeroplane. The old Hercules, which is still in service with many forces, in June 2010. Starting a fleet of 17 of these aeroplanes, and they're going to be running in, hopefully providing us with a topside pass on the first run from our left. Models. All 17 of the J's are based at 8-wing Trenton, along with the few Ernst and Derek Pasma. Also on board, Sergeant Timothy Morris, Master Corporal Corey Barnard and Corporal Nicholas Kendall. They from 436 Squadron of the Royal Canadian Air Force at 8-wing Trenton in Ontario, bringing to a close their demonstration of the Lockheed Martin CC-130J Hercules. And a very graphic illustration of the short landing capabilities of this latest model Hercules as we see the rear ramp go down on the runway. Going into reverse on the 4 AE-2100 engines. The loadmaster on the rear ramp, no doubt, helping guide them along.
The gunner identifies further enemy vehicles and calls for the pilot to reposition the aircraft for another strike, this time electing for a salvo of rockets followed by high explosive 30mm cannon rounds. The target will be acquired and tracked by the gunner providing a steering cursor to aid the pilot who will aim and fire the rockets.
Tally armour, rocket to gun, action rockets. Go co-op, match and shoot. Co-op rockets, match and shoot, firing. The action rockets, actioning gun, 10 round burst, valid range, firing.
Converting the speed to height, the pilot minimises the threat of ground fire, this time with a 360-degree wing over, making tracking and predicting the aircraft's flight difficult for an enemy attempting to engage. The Apache is of course usually operated in pairs and can be teamed with other platforms such as the Wildcat.
Target rocket.
The crew then work together to update a set of pre-engagement checks, ensuring all systems are configured correctly. With the SAM threat eliminated, the crew can climb into a wheel, circling the target to assess and ensure a decisive effect has been achieved. The gunner's scan with the cameras is interrupted as the pilot spots enemy soldiers from a dug-in position, bringing a heavy machine gun to bear in the aircraft's direction.
Good effect on target. 4 enemy vehicles destroyed. Radar threat eliminated. Target, pilot helmet sight. Dismount HMG. My gun, auto range, firing.
Using his helmet-mounted monocle as a sight, the pilot slaves the gun to his eye line and engages simply by looking at the target and pulling the trigger.
Good spot, target rounds. All targets destroyed. Continuing mission.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the tactical demonstration of how Apache crews work together to operate and fight their aircraft. Crews trained to do this in all weathers, by day, by night, and often. Establishing in the high hover at 800 feet, you can see the Apache's powerful hover performance. Tim will initiate a dive with cycling to 80 degrees nose down before rolling through 90 degrees while almost vertical. Of the manoeuvre. The Army Air Corps can also provide reconnaissance, direction of artillery and mortar fire, command support to ground units, and tactical mobility, such as positioning forces, conducting resupply, or extracting casualties. The majority of the Corps is held at high readiness for operations to deploy either alongside the Army's division, the Air Assault Task Force, as well as the commitment to supporting special forces both in the UK and around the world. The transition to the Echo model Apache will ensure that the Corps continue to operate the best attack helicopter in the world. A significant update to the longbow that you see today, the AH-64 Apache Guardian, will be fully integrated with the new Royal Navy Queen Elizabeth class aircraft carriers to continue providing a vital land and maritime strike capability. The Apache has 4 weapons pylons mounted on the stub wings. These stations of the aircraft is the Target Acquisition and Designation Site, or TADS, housing the day TV and infrared cameras. A further infrared sensor mounted above the
we'll see the aircraft pitching into a max performance turn. They then move on to the T-45 Goshawk at Naval Air Station Meridian, Mississippi. And their training, if they're successful, culminates in that all-important first carrier trap, landing on a conventional aircraft carrier in the T-45C model of the Goshawk. We'll begin to see when the aircraft to us, when it'll be decelerating. Lateral transition and a pedal turn.
Great pleasure to introduce the 2019 Royal Air Force Tucano display. That distinct noise you'll hear throughout the display is the uprated Garrett TPE turboprop engine fitted to the RAF Tucano by Shorts in Belfast. This particular engine boasts more power than the original Tucano design. If you look out to the left, you'll see Liam repositioning and coming back towards crowd centre, and he's about to roll the aircraft through 720 degrees in the 5-point roll. This year's display is supported by Babcock International Group, who provide engineering and ground support to the RAF Tucano fleet at its home in RAF Linton on Ouse in Yorkshire. And the team's thanks go out to them for helping us to make this year's display possible. Liam now about to pull up for the start of a loop where he'll peak upside down at a height of 2,300 feet. This year's Tucano display pilot, as I've already mentioned, is Flight Lieutenant Liam Matthews. Liam is known in the military as a skimmy qualified flying instructor, meaning he demonstrated above average ability during his flying training and was selected at an early stage of his career to become a flying instructor. As Liam runs away from the crowd, he's going to pull up into a noddy stall turn, a great opportunity for some photographs of the Tucano in its planned form. Nodding to the left first, then to the right, then back down to the left as he dives back towards the crowd for some energy for his next manoeuvre. This is Liam's first season as a display pilot and the Tucano's final year as a display aircraft, so a very momentous occasion for 72 Squadron. Another supporter you may. The Tucano, now at the end of its service, has served 30 years with the #1 flying training school, the oldest military flying school in the world. As it finishes its final year of service, the Texan T1 aircraft is working. Liam is now positioning to fly the aircraft in a high G turn, pulling 4.5 G. As he runs back towards the crowd, he's going to pull hard on the stick and be pushed into the seat with the force of nearly half a ton. This manoeuvre is another example of manoeuvres taught to students at basic fast jet training, allowing them to appreciate how to fly an aircraft to its maximum performance.
What is going on?
The Tucano you see flying in front of you today is the stepping stone for flying a military fast jet. Students graduating from this aircraft will go on to fly the new Hawk T2 that is also based at RAF Valley in North Wales. Liam now pulling up and putting the aircraft on a knife edge before feeding in some top rudder to keep the aircraft pointing skywards. Liam joined the Royal Air Force directly from university, and I joined the Royal Navy after my A-level studies. Now fairly early in both our military careers, as much as Liam has enjoyed flying it for you. We hope
noisy once again with the Belgian air component. General Dynamics F-16A MLU Fighting Falcon. design that remarkably flew 45 years ago this year on the 2nd of February 1974. That was the date of the official first flight of the prototype F-16. Has been added since then. Now, this is one of the display aircraft using flares in today's show. We'll see them being fired at numerous intervals during the display, especially when the aircraft is in the vertical. Here he is performing a barrel roll in towards us. Originally intended by its then manufacturer, General Dynamics, as a lightweight fighter, but which soon evolved into something far more capable. It is today, of course, a product of one of our sponsors, Lockheed Martin. This was an early F-16A, but like the A models in use with the early European buyers, see the aircraft coming in for a low approach. It'll be going around into a dirty barrel roll, dirty meaning with the undercarriage still down. And straight away you can
as it takes a very short amount of shrift to take off, and that will be followed. Auster AP9 taking off now, showing its short field performance, and directly in front of us as they turn, the complexities of this display are such that each aircraft has working predominantly in the Far East and in the Middle East throughout the 60s and early 70s, and also in Northern Ireland. The Auster AOP9, which is in front of you now, is the aircraft that links the RAF Air Observation Post squadrons and the glider pilot regiment who both flew that aircraft. As we now get attacked, right is also carrying out the same manoeuvre. The Bell 47 is an American design from the 50s, and bought as a stopgap in the 60s by the Army Air Corps. Most well known, of course, as the Kazakh helicopter in MASH. To apply to be pilots by giving control of the aircraft to the commanding officers, and it was a very successful experiment that went on throughout the 1960s and early 70s until everything was absorbed back in, basically due to the complexity of modern aircraft. Passing in front now, the Beaver, used in Northern Ireland, used specialist cameras for intelligence gathering. A lot of it is still classified to this day. And many of the ex-Army Air Corps Beavers are still flying around the world. As the Auster turns tight, inside the Beaver's turning circle, look to your left and we have the Scouts appearing at a high rates of knots. The Scout is a purely British helicopter, designed by Saunders and Rowe, and had a long gestation from the late 50s into the early 60s. Our particular aircraft, 626, it's a beautiful and graceful airplane, the Yeovilton Beaver, and it only had a relatively short career in the Army. This particular aircraft came into service in 1961 and spent most of its early career flying in the Far East, between Singapore, Malaya, and in that area there, before coming back and flying mostly in Northern Ireland. As looking to the left, the Auster touches down, and Julian will lift it up now, and you can see the helicopters performing the manoeuvre known as a quick stop. It's worth bearing in mind that the Sioux has a petrol engine, effectively, a Lycoming, and the Scout has a quite high powered turbine, so they mismatch. The Scout moving to the side, while Rich Pellens in the Sioux moves back at a nice gentlemanly pace. It's a demonstration of the Scout, of course, later on was redeveloped into the Wasp helicopter, which is a famous naval helicopter. Superficially the same, but with quite a few differences, as it was almost 9, but that's to allow it to land efficiently on ships. A good photo opportunity now for everybody as the Beaver lands in front of our two rotary aircraft. And if you look to your left, the Auster will also be going through. Thank you so much for enjoying our show today, and we hope to see you at many other air shows around the country. Thanks very much, Ben.
600 feet and 0 knots in a matter of seconds to imitate coming in under the radar and climbing briefly to scan the battle space before nosing down and returning below the heights at which he can be spotted. Chris will now complete a series of wing overs to show the rapid turn in direction the helicopter is capable of. Chris now flying rearwards. I'd like to see the red arrows doing that. This is a great opportunity to give them a wave. Over the shoulder and into a tight figure of 8. Show the air.
How much they're going to be for you? It shouldn't be that expensive. Maybe like maybe fine.
To the inverted and pulling through a half loop up to about 1100 feet before diving in once again and up into a barrel roll, but no ordinary barrel roll, because he gets to the apex and then negative G, shoulder snaps.
Blackjack and then you went here today. Open up a thing and tell them the numbers there, folks. Mix and match. When you're shooting on it, you still can win there. One win at any price now. One win at any size. As you can the next everybody inside everything. If you like to play the game, you like to join in with us, come right in.
At the time, credit went to Lieutenant Peter Carmichael. More recent evidence, however, suggests another seafaring pilot from the same flight as Alize, who delivered the coup de grace against the Hague. Like the Hawker Seahawkins is a lead attacker. Planes securing the first time fleet thereafter pretty soon. Squadrons of the Royal Navy Volunteer Reserve.
All right,
The top display here is one of the hangars, but on the final to land, an elegant display of one of his favourite mounts. In big battle formation with the patriotic red, white and blue smoke 19 season. Red 2 is Flight Lieutenant Damo Green. Damo has previously flown the Hawk as an aggressor pilot on 100 Squadron. Red 1 upside down at 2,500 feet, smoke trailing representing that Apollo landing craft. On the right wing tip of concrete. Upside down at 2,500 feet in the Lancaster roll. Now the Lancaster, of course, not renowned for its aerobatic capabilities, but it's reputed that the great test pilot keep your eyes on the aircraft staying low. Continuing the hard roll, the synchro pair facing up, they're about to cross smoke paths in the slingshot. To form an inverted V formation, Red 9 is about to fly straight down the middle in the goose.
Little bit right, now.
Pulling up with the red, white and blue smoke is Red 9 Flight Lieutenant Dan Lowes. Dan is a former Typhoon pilot and weapons instructor. He's in his third and final year on the team. Up through the middle of the vortex is Red 8 Flight Lieutenant Chris Minden-Smith. Chris is a former Tornado G officer. Circle crossing 3 times in the spectacular carousel. And pilots pulling 7G fighting the G-forces as they cross the smoke colour will change, leaving a red and blue half of the circle. To the left in a snake-like pattern across the sky in the Python.
Now,
Red 1 commanding the voice changes for the smoke. Each aircraft having 5 minutes of white, 1 minute of red, and 1 minute of blue smoke. Red 9, Reds 8 and 9 once more, rolling around 6 and 7. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching the RNAS!
as though certainly the fighters maintain maximum visibility over the nose for as long as possible before setting up on finals. And we are indeed going to get the Lancaster coming into land, that too with wheels down, Spitfire 19 on the ground, Hurricane to follow, and then indeed the drew up did indeed contain the aggressors, but thankfully Jetman is on his way to aid the friendlies. And yes, Jetman has landed on top of one of the enemy vehicles. In the form of the two Hawk performing a strafing pass. And that certainly put the enemy on the back foot. They're forming a defensive line now, as firing between the two sides continues, and the first rotary support comes in to aid the friendly forces from the left.
And we have two Wildcat HMA2s, 825 Naval Air Squadron, supporting friendly forces here. You'll have one helicopter providing fire support from a Zephyr machine gun, while the other Wildcat deploys the MAYOT team via fast rope. MAYOT are the mobile air operations team. They insert with advanced amphibious forces and manage CHF air assault operations from the ground. They've now been deployed in a rear position to assist friendly forces on the front line on the ground.
And as the two Wildcats from 815 climb away, as indeed they're being engaged by surface-to-air missiles, and there go the flares.
See momentarily.
In terms of the vehicles we've got out there at the moment, Alex, we've currently in service and stationed here at Yeovilton as more smoke grenades are dropped to create a smoke screen between friendly and enemy forces. And here comes the other Wildcat from 847 Squadron and the 4 Commando Merlins.
.847 Squadron provide a forward recce assistance to ground troops, flying at low level, popping up, sending back vital intelligence to command, before popping back down at low level and getting away without being seen. We have the Commando Merlins here from 846 Squadron. They can provide a troop carrying ability, carrying up to 24 fully laden Royal Marines, which actually makes up a troop. We should see 2 sections coming out the back of these Merlins as they approach their HLS now, which has been designated by the MAYOT team. We should note actually that CHF is an entirely self-sufficient unit that uniquely for British military aviation units deploys with its own engineering. 5 tons, a total length of 19.5 metres, which is about double the length of your standard double-decker bus, as well as with another floor, making it a triple-decker bus.
All the while, the Wildcat AH-1 from 847 Squadron was providing armed overwatch.
See now the section of Royal Marines that have come out the back of the Merlin.
As the two other Merlins come in with their underslung loads, the first one with the gun, the second one, the light grey one, that's the Mark IV we were just talking about, with the ammunition.
The oval. You can see the sections of Royal Marines fanning out now to overwhelm the enemy. Now this extra section of Royal Marines deployed onto the ground, they surely stand no chance.
Indeed, the enemy forces have been well and truly pushed back behind their vehicles, and the inexorable progress of the friendlies towards victory continues.
As I mentioned earlier, July.
And there, I believe, Alex, an example of some of the vehicles that would be used indeed on the cold weather operations in Norway.
That's it, that's the BV there. The small unit support vehicle. They use these quite often out in Norway to transport troops as well as all sorts of stores. Completely capable all-terrain vehicle, which is a godsend to the lads out on the ground and getting stores out to them.
The strafing capabilities of the 847 Squadron, while helicopters pass by from left to right, the two Wildcats from 815 in the lead, the 4 commando Merlins to follow. And it looks like hostages have been taken. The gun that was airlifted into action earlier by one of the Merlins now being brought to bear on enemy positions on the far side of the airfield.
These would be known in-depth positions to stop the enemy from reinforcing the lads that have just been eliminated on the ground by the Royal Marines.
And indeed, the friendly forces now well and truly dug in. The enemy have been captured. But the support being provided by the gun continues. Never change. And here we see all of the ground elements involved in the show that we've just put on for you forming up